was the first time I got first place. I was putting gas in the car, and I said, "I'm going to stop this at $20." And without looking, I just let go of my fingers, and it stopped at $20. And I just proclaimed in the gas station, the QT, I said, "I'm fucking winning today." And we proceeded to get in the car, and like 6 hours later, I won.
Hello, and welcome to the Absolute Guard podcast.
Hey, welcome to the Absolute Guard podcast. This is episode 23. My name is Benny, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host John, who I just realized is not Porter John or John Toy on Instagram. He is Porter John AZ.
Oh yeah, I forgot that. Rather, Porta John was taken, which that's not surprising. I made my account last June or something, so
Yeah.
long since taken. But I'm all up on the Hive user. Wait, actually, Hive has a security breach now. I don't know what social medias I'm on anymore. So, how's it going, Benny?
I'm doing good. I went to the Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle show yesterday. That was great. I had a good time downtown with my wife. So that was a wonderful time. It's nice to have Sunday, Mondays off. And when I saw when that was on a Monday of all days, I was like, I'm going to this because I miss out on everything else that happens on Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. So
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So, did you like the concert or the show rather?
Yeah, I had a great time at the show. Just didn't like walking around downtown. I'm just, I'm getting old. Back's not holding up like it used to. So yeah.
Yeah, dude, I've been getting lower back pain for like other things too. Jeez, that's hilarious. So who are we talking to today?
Today we are talking to Mr. SNK, aka Nico. This is basically like my oldest friend in the AZFGC. Met him on the Shoryuken forums, looking for just basically up in my game was Honda, and he was a frequent visitor in there. Basically found out he was an AZ. I think I briefly met him at my first Evo in 2011, and then when I moved down here in 2012, we got into a lot of rides down baseline, all that kind of stuff, going to Hazes and ran bets and stuff.
Nice. Nothing creates more bonding experiences than FGC carpools. And I've had a similar kind of relationship with Nico over the years, where he's helped me like level up my game in a lot of different aspects of Street Fighter 4 in particular. And in general, like I learned a lot of like life lessons around competition from him, and so I'm really excited to talk to him today. So let's go ahead and bring him on. What's up, Mr. SNK?
Gentlemen, John, Benny, it's good to be here. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to shoot the breeze with some of you guys.
Yeah, it's nice. So usually when we get a new guest on, this is your first time on the podcast. Hopefully we can get you back on some other time. We like to start and find out like what's the meaning behind your gamer tag? How did it start out? Like, is it something you created for yourself, or was it bestowed upon you by somebody else?
No, this was all me. So my favorite professional wrestler growing up was Mr. Perfect.
Okay.
So that's where the Mr. came in. And then, TLDR, Mr. is a man of experience and expertise by definition. And then SNK, well, I didn't grow up playing Street Fighter. I grew up playing King of Fighters, Metal Slug, Fatal Fury, stuff like that. So like when I went to the after school program for the bad kids, they had Fatal Fury for the Genesis, and I was like, oh, this is really fun. Like, I guess I like fighting games. So Mr. Capcom just sounded like shit. And
Still does.
SNK, so like all villains usually have like 4 or 5 letter names per se. So like the 5 letters just worked. It's easy, and it's what I represent. Just we want to have a decent time, and we want to win.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, there's a reason there's no Mr. Capcom, right? There's a Captain Commando.
Yeah, yeah.
Captain
Captain Commando, yeah, like Captain Capcom. Like, no, nobody. There's no edge to it. It lacks
Yeah,
backbone. I mean,
yeah,
my favorite Street Fighter character is Sagat, right? So,
yeah,
Mr. Sagat, like, it's not gonna work.
yeah,
If I put like my hand over my eye to resemble an eye patch, like,
yeah.
no, it's not gonna work. I can't stand on a chair and like flex my biceps and maniacally laugh. Sorry, so Mr. SNK it is.
Nice, nice. So I know from just being friends for a long time, like you and your brother, really big gamers. So like, when did you get started playing fighting games in particular?
I think we were on vacation. We were on vacation in Florida of all places. So I'm from the East Coast. Spoilers. Um, and there was a Street Fighter 2 machine in a 7-Eleven, and that was probably going to be like the second or third introduction I had to that side of the fence for fighting games. And I seen like two people our age years back, like arguing with each other and like pumping cords into a machine, yelling, "That's bullshit! Stop throwing me!" Stuff like that. I was like, "Oh, this is really fun." It's like a more violent chess. So I was like, "Okay, like I can learn something like this." So that was sort of like the hook. But the real line and sinker was I was playing a lot of CVS2 on Xbox Lag, and then I went down to Golf Land. Then I was like, "Sweet, all right, I get to play people." And what really got me into it, and matter of fact, it got the ball rolling for a lot of things, was I ran into Neil. I ran into Cigar Bob at Golfland playing CVS2.
Okay.
And now when you went to Golfland when Street 4 came out, how that was up front, right when you
Yep.
walked in.
Yep.
So now imagine when you walked in and it was CVS2 right up front. That's how long ago uh I got into this monkey business. And I practiced all of my combos. I learned how to link everything. I learned how to roll cancel. I learned how to do all of this stuff. And there I am, like, okay, put my coins in. And there's this short, smug, like, pudgy, bald bastard with a crappy attitude sitting there. Okay. So he beats the shit out of me. Like, clean, right? Like, character OCVs, all this other fun stuff. And then he has the nerve to tell me, no matter what you practice in training mode, if you can't implement it live, it's useless. And
Yeah.
that was a huge eye opener for me.
Yeah, I get that. Out of curiosity, was it a head-to-head cabinet? Was it side by side?
Side by side.
Were you on the same cabinet?
Yeah, it was a side by side.
Okay. So like you're in there then.
Yeah,
You get to
well,
see the
so
expressions on his face.
that's where I picked up. Like, I don't know if you guys ever paid attention to a lot of my tournament play. I would always move my seat slightly back when I was playing someone side by side because I'm
Mhm.
watching their inputs.
Mm, okay.
So if like you think like, oh well, he random reacted ultra that fireball, like no, I just watched you put in a fireball, and I'm going to take advantage of that. So that's like the dirty stuff that the arcade taught me, was like keep an eye on everything that's going on.
Nice.
Yeah.
How big was the scene for CVS2 at Golfland back then? Was it just Neil sitting on the cabinet by himself, or were there other people playing? Was there a line?
I think by the time I got into it, it was at the tail end of its life cycle. It's like 2003, 2004. So maybe like 10 or 15 people tops.
Okay.
Nothing was like like Street Fighter 4 boom.
Sure.
And I think that's probably the best way I could put it.
And
Yeah.
then what drew you to CVS2 as opposed to the other games that were big at the time, like Marvel or Street Fighter 3?
Oh, it had SNK characters in it.
There you go. That makes sense. That makes sense.
That's it. That's it. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Did you play a bunch of SNK characters in that game?
Mostly, yeah. I played like Hamru, Geese. Why can't I think of his name right now? Yeah,
Was it Rock
Masaki
Howard?
Star. No, I didn't play Rock. No,
Damn it.
Rock was Rock. Yeah, no, I
Rock
played
Howard's my
Geese.
favorite.
Yeah. That's that was probably like my first into like getting into competitive fighting, going to the tournaments, feeling like your hand shaking from such a good match. Because before everything was casual,
Yeah.
everything was like online. Like okay, cool, I'm just gonna do stuff. But when you when you get that first like true tremble from either excitement or fear or fatigue because you used, too many brain cells in a set, like that's when it really kicks in like, holy crap, I'm invested.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I don't know, me personally, like I never used to get nerves, and then like I don't know, as I progressed, like there were times where I was just like, yeah, I don't know if like you said, like I was just more invested as I got deeper into things or what, and I was just like all of a sudden, like I'd be like, man, I need to like calm down, like I need to breathe, like yeah, my hands are shaking after this win, like holy, it's just like the Benny clap thing, like I would just pop off and all that kind of stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm like really into this stuff.
It's definitely a function of like how much time you put into the game. I think once you put in a certain amount of time, you're like, I got to do good because I have to rationalize the time I've put in. I've
Yeah.
got to do the training mode combos that I've been
What's the
practicing over and
ROI
over.
on this?
Yeah,
Yeah, fair.
Like
That's an ROI.
like that's it. And to answer your Benny's question on like the nerves bit, why do you think I always kept a flask in my jacket?
oh
Did,
man.
did you ever find that like drinking? Did you think was drinking a power up for you, or did it harm your play but still calm you down? Like,
So at the time, I wasn't settled down, and we were working like 60 hours a week and drinking on Tuesdays. So for me to have like a half a flask in the course of 6 hours on a Saturday just calmed my nerves. Like it just, like when you take that first sip of a nice stiff drink and it just eases yeah, exactly.
yep.
So like it just like kills your nerves and makes you relax. That's what happened because the decision making was sharp. The reactions were sharp. There was no like, I'm gonna fall asleep in the chair. Like, no, it was just to kill those nerves so my hand stopped shaking. That's pretty much what it was. Excuse my dog's barking. I think there's a Terminator outside.
Can't even hear it.
Yeah.
For those who are listening on the audio portion of the feed, I am currently drinking uh, black and gold sake, Gekikan sake, chilled sake, and I was like, you know what? If there's an episode to have a drink on, it would be the one with Nico on it. Because Nico, you were known for your sophisticated use of vices during play. Like you
Yes.
had a cigar on you at all times. You had like I remember one of my first evos. You gave me a whole bunch of was it Ozo or
Uzo.
Uzo?
Yeah,
And
libations.
I had no idea what that was. Like I remember every Evo used to also like have a cigar gathering. Like you'd all meet at a cigar shop and just shoot the shit too, right?
Yeah. For many years. It's not all business when you're going to tournaments. That's how you get burnt out and
Yeah.
miserable. Plus, like, it's Las Vegas. If you think I'm gonna sit in some sweaty convention hall for 4 days, you're out of your fucking mind. I'm sorry. There's way too much trouble. Again, this is when I was like lifting weights and not married. So yeah, I'm not sitting in some convention hall for 4 days. Like I've got things to do. I've got people to see. And yeah, like are we gonna sit down and smoke cigars? You can ask Davies. Like one day we walked to Caesar's Palace and I think I almost killed him because he was he was like, oh man, like he was dying by the time we got there. So I average probably like 7 to 9 miles daily, given my profession.
Wow.
So we're getting there, and he's like, "Are we almost there? I'm dying," and I'm like, "Yeah, we're almost there. We're almost there." So we finally get there, and he was like, "This was worth the headache." We had fresh mojitos and like good cigars. And
Yeah.
you look forward to that stuff. And it's funny how John, you'd say that was like sophisticated or the use of vices. But what I do, if you take the suit off and you look back 50 or 60 years, it was very blue collar.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until the late 60s, early 70s when people started slapping suits on and smoking fat cigars that it picked up a new term as a luxury good. Like we're not riding jet skis and hanging out on yachts. Like we're smoking combustibles or smoking cigars and we're having a drink because
Yeah.
we just got done working all day. And this is time to relax. So like when you get off of work and you have like that 45-minute window of like that work funk where you're still an asshole, well, you're going to sneak off and go do something before you come home to your family because those people actually love you and want to see you. So why are you
Yep.
going to treat them like dirt because you had a basic day at work? So like, no, we commit to our vices proper.
Fair enough. Well,
Yeah,
to
and so
rewind the
that
timeline a little bit here, so you mentioned you played CVS2, and then did you play any other games after CVS2?
Uh, no, I think from that point on, I started playing Counter-Strike and some World of Warcraft.
okay. Yeah, I was
'Cause,
curious. Like, I was gonna say, like, I was curious. Like, when you started, you said you were playing tournaments for CVS2 and stuff like
mhm.
that. Like, how are you? How were your results and how are you doing at that
Oh,
time in
horrible.
terms?
Absolutely horrible. I didn't understand win conditions. I didn't understand purpose behind buttons, setting things up, meaties. I didn't understand tournament play. I just understood showing up to play games and hope I do well.
I gotcha.
I didn't understand tier lists. I didn't understand the importance of, again, like win conditions. So having a dramatic life lead, but not having the momentum to like pump the brakes or just
Matchups, like
do what it
knowing
takes
your
to
matchup
win.
spread. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, excuse me. So that really didn't make sense until probably like 2013, 2014. If I'm very honest, I didn't learn how to play Street Fighter until probably like 10 or 12 years in when it finally started to click. Whether it was like you have like boxing or martial arts or wrestling,
yeah.
it's still considered, a live action sport. And it took me a long freaking time to understand how to think versus just playing, if that
Like,
helps.
are you talking about like your relationship with your opponent and how to think around your opponent, or is it more like
No, so the opponent the opponent tells a story as you're playing them. When you're showing up, for the most part, it's a one player game until that court deviates and you have to, I guess, like detour around it. But for the most part, it is a one player game and you need to make sure you're taking advantage of all of your options. I didn't know how to think like that until a couple years ago.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So, you said you went from CVS2, and then like you were playing. You said Counter Strike, World of
hmm
Warcraft, and then when did you kind of get back into playing like fighting games after that?
we played a lot of Virtual Fighter 5.
Okay.
And I think like I took a small break from playing Street Fighter because you remember like when Vanilla Street Fighter 4 came out, I had to deal with like picking a bad character, whatever, that's on me. So that whole like the bad character, yeehaw. I didn't pick the character with the most options to win, and that's my fault due to preference. Again, thinking about playing to win, having the highest route or the fastest route to getting damage, the options to cover your opponent's options, like that was all on me. So if I were a true tournament player when Vanilla Street Fighter 4 came out, I would have been playing Sagat, Akuma, like I've been riding that tier list because like now, if I play League of Legends, I pick top three characters on the meta. If I play Overwatch, I'm picking top two characters on the meta based on the role. So it took me a long time to think like, hey, how come when I play just about anything else, or I even in business, I will take the strongest and best strategy to achieve my goals. But when I play fighting games, hello, like, head scratching moment. Uh, I pick a character that's fun and I'm comfortable with. I'm like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
I remember like one of the first things you said to me during Street Fighter 4 era is when you play chess, you play black, and
Yeah.
like I took that at the time. I took that as like he's playing defensive. He wants to react to whatever his opponent does and deliberately cede tempo at the beginning of the match. But over time, I've kind of thought about it a little bit more. I'm like, is it more like you put yourself deliberately at a disadvantage by picking a
Yes.
character like Honda?
hmm Because I still play Street Fighter 4 here and
Yeah.
there, not full time, but I recently started messing around with top tier characters and I went from losing to certain players to blowing their backs out just to show you the gap in skill. Because I went
Yeah.
from having crap options and fighting uphill battle to now there's Sifsis pushing the boulder up the hill and not me.
Yeah.
we're
Yeah,
going to lots of Greek today.
Yeah. So it's their fault where like never in my life have I had a grown man cry and tell me you counterpicked me. Like that's what I started doing to people. I was like, wow, this is really easy. I have to
yeah,
put like 4 weeks worth of like learning specific matchups into this, and then people crumble. Cool.
yeah.
Now, like Benny would say, like as a Honda player, like we're predetermined to just eat shit and deal with it. So you start picking upper crust. Like John, you skipped the neutral in 4 with a Buki.
Yeah.
You played a 0 team. So like
Yep.
that's I'm not taking a jab at you. It's an engineer's
Nope,
thought
I did.
process. Easiest path to victory. Like we're going to take this. You're going to slip
Yeah.
up. I'm going to capitalize off of this, and then it's your problem, not mine. Like that took me years to figure out. And like you just showed up and you're like, hell, hey, I have an idea. Don't get knocked down. The end.
Yeah, it was all about capitalizing on momentum, and then I will say though, like with neutral, it was I do regret not learning neutral in the Street Fighter 4 era because I learned quickly that if I just try to force my will on people over and over and over again against a good player, like they will eventually block that, and then I have to fall back on something else. But if I've put all my eggs in one basket as far as making sure all my vortex setups are tight, it doesn't matter if I haven't knocked them down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's like,
yeah.
no, I was gonna say like I mentioned at the beginning, like when I first moved here in 2012, that's when the Hasbats, the Ranbats down in Levine were happening, and yeah, that's when me and Nico, like, you know, I'd hit him up and be like, hey, you gonna come to the Ranbats? He's on the way, and then you got to take that long drive down baseline. So I was just like, well, I'll pick you up, and then we'll go take that 30-minute drive, and like we had a lot of conversations, and the one thing I always remember is like a lot of our talks weren't about like character matchups because like he said with Honda, like we're at a disadvantage with a lot of like the top tier matchups. So a lot of the talks and stuff that I remember was just about like the mental things, right? Like play the matchup, like as the matchup, but then like it was a lot of like mental things and how to like kind of break down your opponent, uh things that you can do to kind of take advantage of their weaknesses, and because the matchup, like character matchup, you just have to deal with that. Like so if somebody's gonna play Ryu, well, okay, this is gonna be a tough matchup. Or we had Velociraptor in our scene, Goken. That matchup is hell, and he'd be like, yeah, it's just like well, you're gonna have to fight your way through this, but just kind of keep in mind, try to learn his timings, try to learn this and that, and
He
there's a
sent
lot of stuff.
infiltration to losers with that Gokin. So like yeah, there was some serious work put into that.
He was an innovator for that
Absolutely.
character, and I feel the same way about you, Mr. SNK, as far as the innovation around Honda. And as much as you say the character is handicapped you, like you were also at the forefront pushing the tech and trying like playing the matchup as is. Someone had to define what that matchup was out of the gates, right?
Agreed.
And I feel like you had a very large presence online with Shoryuken, and you had all the sticky. I think you were the mod of the E Honda forum, and you had the stickies, right?
I was there long enough to where I talked to the person. I think it was like Valaris running it. I was just like, "Hey, can you like make me a mod for this so we can clean up the garbage and actually get
Yeah.
something going?" And I come from like information is very important. If you're a scientist, like your mission statement is to share your information so that
Mhm.
everybody learns from it. So there was no hiding tech, and we had to get in there. We had to grind it out, but it wasn't, I solely couldn't take the credit. If anything, I was more of a tuning fork to make sure
Mm.
all of the information was front and center versus just getting lost. In how forums used to work. Not everything is, Discord and Facebook where you can just like press Control F and or if you can just find something and call it a day. A lot of good information would end up getting lost in message boards. And why do that, or why subject a very small crowd of people to something like that when we can have everyone's thoughts and ideas front and center. So instead of just doing nothing about it, I opted to take charge, as John said, and just get the show running because one person can only do so much. I can only play against so many people. I'm not going to learn everything. But if
Yeah.
there's 30 of us and we're all sharing information, the workload just got cut down dramatically. So again, like the middle management brain was like, how can we optimize this? And it went from like, why am I going to do all this work when I can just pool everyone together and we can share resources?
Yeah. For me personally, like, yeah, that accelerated my growth a lot because, like, when I look back at like when I first started playing, playing competitively in 2000, yeah, was that 2009?
Yeah.
And then I don't even remember. I'd have to go look back to see when my first like sure you can post was, but I was like, like my story goes, like I went to my first tournament, I got second place, right? I got bodied by a geef. I didn't know how to deal with that, but I was like, I was happy with myself, right? And then we had ran bats later that fall, and I got humbled. I was getting beat by these people that were doing like the most simple things. Like they were doing like I was losing to a Ken player that would do like jump roundhouse and sweep. Like that was a 2-hit combo, and I was like losing constantly to like this player, and I was just like, how do I get better? Because like I don't feel I should be losing to stuff like this. Like this guy's not even doing FADC combos. Like like he's not doing advanced stuff. Like I'm losing to real basic stuff.
And how to basic Street Fighter 4.
Yeah. So like so when I went out and like started to search for that kind of stuff, and I found the forums, and I found like all this information, matchup knowledge, like man, there was so much stuff. Like he said, like he was fine tuning stuff. Like there was character specific combos that I didn't know about, and like I ended up using some of those even like as I progressed as a player. Like one of my favorite memories back in Alaska was I had made like we had started a playoff format for our Ranbats, right? That was something that I really wanted to push forward, and I had made it into those playoffs, and I got to play Weirdo Neo, and he was sandbagging the shit out of me. Like he played like Chun Li at first, and I was just like, man, you're not even gonna let me play your jury, like really, bro? Like he was sandbagging me for the first couple matches. Then finally, I'm like, on the cusp of like potentially winning this set. It was like a single elimination set, and then he switches the jury, and like there was a situation in there where I got like a very specific jury combo where like I could link the sumo smash. And I was just like, I just remember the reaction. Like I had the clip saved somewhere, but I just remember the reaction from the crowd, and everybody's like, "Holy shit!" Like that works. And they're just and, right then I was just like, this is all the stuff that I've been learning. You know what I mean? Like this is like for me that was like a huge moment for me to like progress to that point to like where I was applying all that like character specific knowledge that I knew.
And I bet you it felt good too.
Yeah, it felt amazing. I mean, I ended up losing because like me and my Galaxy Brain Reads always wants to go Ochio somebody, and I lost to that. So I was like, but just kind of getting to that point, like gaining the knowledge and then actually like applying that, from where I started, like that was like a huge turning point for me.
It's like the 4th month of going to the gym when you start finally seeing the results, or after drawing for a couple of months and you get to see your progress.
Yeah.
That's where it was at for the longest time, like, especially for me. Sorry, John, I didn't mean to steal the thunder from you here. Um, Getting to see the progress and then, going on with, like, the tournament thing. I didn't win a Street Fighter 4 tournament for God knows how many years. I was, like, the king of 3rd place, and, like, it took a psychiatrist to figure out why that was happening. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I didn't really have a ton to say there. I do want to highlight the dichotomy of the Honda player where, like you said, you have the science and the pre-work that comes with it, right? But then you also have the cerebral aspect of it and the reads and the opponent conversation or storyline, as you put it. And so I'm curious about like back then, like compared to now and back then. So back then, which did you weigh higher? Did you weigh the pre-work higher, or the science part more, or the read based style?
The science part more.
Okay.
The science part definitely more. The read-based style now as a player works wonders because I have experience to back it up.
Mhm.
But you can't skip the process, so you have to do the science and the pre-work before you can get to that stage. So before it was understanding like off of a forward throw, pressing stand roundhouse, and then jumping in, or after the back throw, pressing crouch medium punch, and then jumping in and understanding these are my safe jump options. Do they have a 3 frame reversal? I can't do that. What should I do after this? Okay, take a small step forward, crouch short, and then medium sumo splash to beat the option. So you can't just, I don't want to say just learn that because that sounds obnoxious, but you
Yeah.
have to you have to do the pre-work. You have to sit there and spend hours practicing these things. And then once you have the base down, then you can start layering on top of that foundation, which is where the psychology comes in.
Yeah, yeah. See, that's a great point that you bring up because like safe jumps was something that was completely foreign to me. Like there were people in my local scene that knew about that kind of stuff, and they would use it against me. Like Ryu had a real specific forward throw safe jump,
Mhm.
and like it would always kill me. And I'm just like, so when I started looking through those forums, I'm just like, what does Honda have that's similar to this, or that's like this? And I learned like the back throw safe jump, and it's crazy like how much your matchup of your specific character, like you don't people don't know a lot of that stuff, right? Like it's kind of crazy to expect everybody, hey John, do you know that this is a safe jump? Let me see it, let me test your knowledge, right? Like it's a knowledge check, and it's just like uh implementing that. Like I think I even tried that when I played Daigo at Evo. Like I did a back throw, and then I was just like, all right, I don't want to do the safe jump, and then I was just like, I think I messed it up, and then I was just like, but the thought process is there because it's something that I learned, like Nico said. I mean, sure, probably Daigo of all people probably knows that, but I mean, who knows? Like maybe he doesn't, and maybe I
Yeah.
gain an advantage, and I get a read at that point. It's like, okay, he doesn't know that this is a safe jump.
Yeah, there's a
You know what I
bluffing
mean?
aspect to it too, where it's like, I presented 3 different safe jumps to you, and the fourth one is not a safe jump, but you can, I can trick them based on the pattern that I've already showed
You've
them.
been
And yeah,
conditioned,
Yeah,
absolutely.
right, right,
yeah,
right.
but
I I roughed him up too. Actually, now that I think about it, because he was playing Yun right when the twins were terrorizing everybody,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I almost sent him packing. It was like last game, last round, and it was the same
yeah,
thing. It was like, yo, you play a crappy character, and I was like, to you, I don't,
yeah.
I play the best character in the game. I'm ignorant. I'm stubborn. These are my choices. I just have to outthink you, and that's sort of, you know, with the therapy bit, you can't just throw time and money at stuff and expect it to go away, which is kind of how I was raised. Like, oh, I'll just muscle through this, or look at this giant bowl of food, I'll just chew through that, or something broke. Well, why learn how to fix it? I'll just pay somebody to do it. So after a while, you just have to suck it up and paint the wall, or change your toilet, or put the dishwasher in, because you just have to learn how to do these things. So that was the irony behind this segue is the first time I got first place, I was putting gas in the car, and I said, I'm going to stop this at $20. And without looking, I just let go of my fingers, and it stopped at $20. And I just proclaimed in the gas station, the QT, I said, I'm fucking winning today. And we proceeded to get in the car, and like 6 hours later, I won.
very cool.
Nice.
That's kind of how that happened. But anyhow, I'm sorry. Yeah, we could probably do this for hours. It kind of sucks that I have to dip. I'll
What
be back for sure.
out of
Yeah,
the so the first tournament that you won, do you remember what year that was, or like what game
I
that
think it
was?
was 2012.
Okay.
Um, the first time I won, excuse me.
and
I
so that
think
was
it,
after all the nerfs.
yeah, pretty much. Like that's the irony behind it. I was playing Abe, and it's the tournaments that count, because like if
Yeah.
nobody shows up and you win a tournament, to me that doesn't mean shit. I'm sorry. You're basically a janitor at that point, just mopping up. So that doesn't count as a tournament win. Um sure, on paper it says first, but no threat was
Yeah,
there. So
exactly.
like you could just look at the bracket and say, I'm gonna point on the bracket, this person's gonna win, because they are. And 9 out of 10 times, you're right. Um I just got out of gallbladder surgery,
I do
and
remember this.
yeah, and Abe sent me to losers, and I got so angry. I think I went outside and I smoked 2 cigars because like, there was no hee-hawing about it. I was just pissed, and I was like, "This guy don't know how to play the character. He's just doing dumb shit. Why am I losing to this? This guy is trash." And I, like, completely psyched myself out, and because you have to trash talk. That's just I have a sports background, so
Yeah.
he wasn't trash, obviously, but for myself, I was like, "I'm losing to a lesser opponent. This is bullshit. I'm not going to have it." And this is what's going through my little, pea brain. And then I come inside and it's time to fight for losers finals. And I looked and it was Ernesto or Crazy EX. And I said, you're not beating me today. And I pummeled him. And then it was time to play Abe. And I said, good luck. And I shook his hand. And then I 3-1'd him the first time, and he said, "You have any more, like, tricks in your bag?" And I said, "No, I'm just getting warmed up." And then I
Hey.
3-1'd him right after that, and he said, "What changed?" And I said, "Everything. Have a good night." And then I left.
He was probably looking for some kind of explanation, and you gave
Yeah.
him absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
That's great.
everything changed. Like, that's what happened. And it was going outside, it was analyzing the matchup, it was, like, throwing my feelings in the trash because that was probably the reason why I lost in the first place because I respected somebody who is literally just mashing plus on block dive kicks. Like, no, that's not how we win matches. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. It's time to be cold. It's time to be calculated. And this is important for me because I lie to myself most of the time about certain things. When I said I was going to win, that wasn't a lie. And I was holding myself accountable. So, yeah, everything was on the line for me because I actually put myself in a corner and applied real world pressure to myself, and like
Yeah.
that outcome was not going to change.
Yeah.
That reminds me of like I don't know if you're a big Dragon Ball fan, but they recently, or not recently, a while back, they brought Frieza back, and then Frieza had a new golden transformation, and the in-universe explanation was, "Well, I never had to try before, but now I'm actually going to put in the work."
Well, no, so it's funny that you say that because when I was a little kid, my brother used to call me a sore winner
Ah,
and the level 9 computer because a lot of things are just effortless. You just learn fast and then you get on with your day. It was like when you were going to school and they were like, "Oh, you're special. You do this stuff fast." Like, no, I just learn a little bit faster, probably from like ADHD or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you run into real competitors and you're like, "Fuck, I have to work for this? Wait, really?" And that was that moment where it was like, "Yeah, oh, Yun has a 5-frame dragon kick. Cool, I can save jump that. Okay, he keeps doing this after a throw. He backdashes twice after he does his far punch. Okay, he'll do 2 jabs and either command grab, or if you go to do something, he'll just dragon kick you. Alright, I understand what's going on now. I'm actually applying myself and reading everything." So, yeah. No, that Golden Frieza thing, because Golden Frieza, if you watch that whole Tournament of Power, he's also middle management. He's just making sure things are going smooth. So, yeah, like, you're kinda right, John.
that's a good way to play. We'll call you
Yeah.
Golden Frieza from now.
Yeah, that works. That
Golden
works 'cause,
SNK.
yeah, like, well, it's because I'm very, very fortunate, from my upbringing that there's a lot of things that I just pick up on. So, when it comes to trying and putting in effort, I'll admit I suck at it because I'm a Cliff Notes guy. I don't have
Mm.
time for all of this shit. I'll learn on the way and then I'll flip through my Cliff Notes. I don't even know if they use Cliff Notes anymore. I'm kinda dating myself here.
Yeah. No, I think it's like Spark. It was Spark Notes for a little bit, and then I don't know what it is
It
now.
was just like, go grab the small little yellow book. It's gonna give
Yeah.
you all of the vital information you need, and then learn the rest along the way. That's kinda
I think for the modern era, that's called Twitter.
oh, golf
But
clap.
one thing I wanted to bring up too is that, like, I think what happens oftentimes is forgive me for trying to interpret this story a little bit, but you basically, you were playing a certain way and you were letting him get away with a lot of different things because you were trying to play the matchup by the book, right? And then
Correct.
after a while, you try to, like, when you calm down and you narrow down specific aspects of the book that you could exploit, that's when you found some success. And to go like kind of a therapy way too, I frequently coin that as getting out of your own way,
Yes.
where you are psyching yourself out by anticipating and respecting them, as you put it, or
Hmm.
anticipating a specific outcome. And then when you don't get that outcome, or like when you feel like your opponent has an unfair advantage against you, you essentially block out a lot of those little details that you ordinarily would be like picking up on during the
Picking up on
match.
correct. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
If I believe it long enough, then I'll also believe the bullshit too. Absolutely.
I have a friend that I've been playing Street Fighter with recently, and he's coming back after a long break. Excuse me. And there were a couple times like he jumped at me, and then I anti-aired him, and I caught him in the side of my eye. He was shaking his head whenever he got anti-aired, and I was like, "Why are you shaking your head?" Because it's like you have to jump at me still, because otherwise you're letting me take that option away from you. And I
Yes.
always think of that as an idea of he's getting in his own way there, and eventually he's just like, "Yeah, you're right. I can jump when I want to."
Yeah.
And then when you have that autonomy to play, that gives you the freedom to kind of adapt more freely. I think you're playing looser, you're playing the way you want to play, and
Well, no, that's exactly it. I just recently had a first to 7, not the one that I just lost like a couple Tuesdays ago, but excuse me, um, a couple of weeks ago, and I think the my opponent won like the first 2 or 3 matches, and I was like, wait, I'm not playing the way I normally play, so I started being a prick, and abracadabra, uh, he went from just running the street with me to being afraid to press buttons and like you said, I wasn't jumping. I wasn't doing all of these outlandish things. And I was like, wait, that's his problem, not mine. So I just started playing my game. So I completely get it. I had the shaking the head moment. I had the punching the arcade stick. I had the self blame. I had all of those steps, but on that third or fourth match, that all went out the window because I said it's time to win.
nice.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things of having a friend and somebody that was going to tournaments with me that played the same character was like for me like he was always the gauge. Like I would however he would play the match, like I'd watch intently, kind of see how he handles it. And like I think every place we went to, I think you outplaced me. I mean, even like the first tournament or the first round bet we went to, I got third, but I lost to you and Latif. And like you played Ryu against me, and I was just like, yeah, of course he's
I know.
gonna do that.
I'm just gonna counterpick you. I was just no, absolutely.
Yeah, because I was just like, and it's just one of those things. But it's just like I was always curious because like eventually later in the life of Street Fighter 4, we both ran into the buzzsaw that was Mocha.
Hmm.
And at one point, like
Oh man, I still
SNK
remember
was
what he
calling
said.
me. Yeah, he called. He was like, "You're the best Honda in this state now," because I could beat him,
Yeah.
but he never beat him, and it always kind of like just kind of blew my mind. Was just like, what am I doing differently that I'm actually like being better than him in this match?
Well, so here's the funny story about this. I actually watched what you were doing and stole all of the tech. And guess what happened when I ran into him next time? The man said, I got Honda'd. I was like, what? Because I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing wrong? And it turned out like all Dudley players just were fishing for counter hits and buffering everything.
Yep.
And with your play style, whether you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna point blank headbutt you for no reason, and then I'm gonna command grab you because you think I'm gonna headbutt again. I was like, that motherfucker's onto something. All right. And I remember to this day, because again, I did the research. I blocked an overhead and ultra 2'd him. And
Yeah.
the look on his face, I was like, hey, your move's -4, pal, and mine comes out in like 0+1. I don't know what to tell you. Eat 500 damage. Sorry.
That's a punish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like it was switched to his 2 half circles instead of a 720. So I'm sitting there like a little kid with crayons, like, yeah, yeah, just jamming away and like punching, like, because after a while, I stopped using the I stopped pressing all 3 buttons and just switched over to 3 punch and 3 kick because now I only have to press 1 button
Yep.
versus 3. So I removed the EX move coming out and I removed the chance for an input error.
Yeah.
So when I was sitting there, like mashing, because I was maniacally mashing away, it was stand block, and I'm pretty sure I put in like 7 or 8 half circles, and I pressed that 3 punch button like 14 times because they were just like, I'm not losing to this guy today. And it was like a big thanks to you because you simplified it. And I don't
Yeah.
want you to take that into any. I don't want you to take that as an insult. I want you to take it as like a deep rooted compliment from me that you simplified something that as much as I looked at the situation and the scenario, I could not figure out, and you just came in and were like, "This is all you have to do." Like,
Yeah, we talked
I'll
about that
be.
with Rock, early on when we interviewed him in terms of like sometimes you just got to do like that kind of random shit like
Mhm.
the oh, why would you DP here of all places? Well, cuz that's what I want to do. Right? And that's kind of like I think the way I explained it was like I felt I was at a disadvantage with every situation with him, right? Like he was
Mhm.
better at execution, he's better at footsies, he's better at anti-airs, like pretty much across the board.
You
Like if you
put
did,
him on a pedestal.
yeah, if you did a tail of the tape, like his side is all green, my side is whatever red or whatever, and I'm just like, well, he's gonna beat me in everything here, like the technical aspects of stuff. Let me throw that all out of the window, and yeah, like you said, just kind of simplify it.
That's what I did to Ernest. I don't know who talked this poor guy into it, but he wanted to first attend me for $100. And I know what he does because he's a robot. He's the closest thing our state would have to a Japanese player. He just executes, executes, executes. Like, I'm gonna pick a high offensive character, and I hope you can block all of this. Good luck. Well, I strive against high offensive characters because I play somebody who's a brick wall. Like, this worked for me. So he's like, "Yeah, man, first to 10 for 100." And I was like, "Are you sure?
Okay.
Are you sure?" Like, I lost $100 to Abe, so I already want Tucson money, right? So I'm gonna give you a chance to like take this back. Like, are you sure you want to play me? Yeah, man. Like Abe can beat you. And I'm like, there's a bit of a difference there, but are you sure? And he was like, yeah. So then, like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to win. So I call Rick Dog over, and I'm like, coach me. He's like, "Yeah, sure." So, like, I went from having, like, a 75% chance of winning to, like, a 95% chance because Rick was whatever that man applies himself to, he's good at. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, when he wakes up in the morning, he pisses excellence. That's just Rick in a nutshell. So, he's coaching me through all this, and, this whole long spiel is to get to there were certain points of the match where he was like, "Okay, tighten up and play strong," and then other, like, points of the match, he was quoting Tropic Thunder on how I should play.
And what was that? What was that quote
I'm not
exactly?
gonna say it.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say it.
Well,
Yeah.
just a heads up, we are running a little bit low on time for you here. I think we wanted to be done by 6, and so I wanted to ask you, are there any shout outs or anything you wanted to make or anything you wanted to promote on
Uh,
your way out here?
I'm not gonna look to promote too much. I will say, shout outs to GRG. The one person that's listening will definitely know. And, happy name day. Anyone else, named Nick out there. It's, Eastern European don't celebrate their birthday, they celebrate a name day. So, like,
Oh,
today's my name day.
oh.
And, that's gonna be it. I would like to thank both of you, for the opportunity to sit here and come down and chit chat. I didn't think I was gonna have this much fun. Like, I thought it was gonna be work because I've done like one or two of these in the past, and like the guys that were interviewing me, I'm pretty sure I would have like rather watched paint dry or like got yelled at by my wife. Like, it was that much enjoyable. Like, I was like, but
Yeah.
I will be back. I just want to say thank you. I had a lot of fun, and next time I'll make sure I like open up my schedule a bit more instead of running around and doing like 50 freaking things on a Tuesday.
Fair
Yeah, I
enough.
got you. Wait, GRG. Is that trying to think. Game recognized game?
Nope. No,
No?
it doesn't have a translation in English, so
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah, it's actually Greek. Yeah, so
I got you,
yeah, it
got you.
just works.
Yeah, I want to talk. I want to talk cerebral gameplay with you and how to have that conversation, how to have that storyline, and how to pick that apart in a pool match or something in the future. That would be.
Absolutely. No, count
Please
me
come
in.
back.
No, I
Yeah,
most certainly will. Like, see me when 6 comes out.
Oh yeah, very
Yeah,
cool.
because I already told my wife. I said I'm probably going to teach one of the kids how to play, but expect my spare time within reason to
yeah,
be clicking buttons in the office. Like, sorry, not sorry.
yeah. I got you.
Very cool. Well, you
All
have a
right.
good night, man. It was good talking to you.
Yeah, good
Gentlemen,
talking to you, bro.
be
See ya.
well, stay safe out there, have a good one. Cheers.
Cheers. So, yeah, this is our first time where we've actually had a guest leave in the middle of our show, and so now we get to kind of react to everything we just talked about. Where I had a little point about your Mocha story, Benny. As far as like to kind of stick with that theme about getting out of your own way, where I've seen a lot of times where, let me think of the way to put this. Like you mentioned that Nico always outplaced you in tournaments, right? So it's kind of safe to say that he was the stronger player at that game in particular, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And one thing I've seen happen, and I'm guilty of this too, is, I don't want to learn from anybody who's not better than me. And up until like, I would even say up until the last like 2 years or so, or even possibly this most recently, this past year, like I have been thinking a lot about that. And like you'll often learn things from people that are on a like a lower tier than you as far as skill goes. And you'll basically like get yourself in a vortex where you just like are thinking about all these different options and whatnot, and oftentimes you just need somebody to knock you out of that and find the simple answer. But the problem is that if you don't accept that input from other people, from a wider variety of people, and you close it off to a very small group of top players and you just mimic what they do, you're going to miss a lot, and you're not going to see some of the like the lower level play in Street Fighter V, for example. Like there's diamond level play, and oftentimes I just learn stuff from the diamond players because I'm like, like I think that's actually really good. It might need some refining, but I can actually make this work for me. And that seems like a textbook example with your Mocha story, where you basically shone a light on a weakness that Mocha had that you didn't. That Nico wasn't able to pick by himself. And if he had a huge ego, he wouldn't have been able to like apply that, because he'd have been like, that was a fluke. It would really been really easy to just write it off and be like, it was a fluke. And what's the number one thing I always hear differently is how come you play differently against me than you do against this person? That's the number one excuse I hear from somebody that just doesn't want to learn,
Yeah, no, that brings up a good point, because I've definitely seen a lot of players, like when it comes to learning, right? They look for those top players, and that's all they want to gain knowledge from, right? Oh, well, who's the best Rufus player? Oh, it's Justin Wong and Ricky Ortiz. I'm going to copy everything that they do, and this other guy, he's not on our level, so I'm going to disregard anything that any kind of matches I see with him, because he's not something that I think I can gain valuable information from.
Yeah, it's awfully utilitarian in that in that aspect, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I mean, we talked about that with Rock too, in terms of like, he super high praise for Mocha, right? I think both of us too, right? Super high praise for Mocha and the kind of player that he is in terms of like execution, footsies, all that kind of stuff. But then like you brought up that point too, that it becomes somewhat of a detriment to your gameplay too, because you're so mechanical, right? Like you're able to be maybe read a little bit more easily, because it's just like, well, if I do this, like this is going to be the outcome pretty much all of the time, right? He's going to throw this out, then he's going to, like Nico's saying, like he's going to hit this normal and buffer into this. I'm going to take this damage, right? So how do I get around that? And it's just like, well, I know he wants to do this, so now let me change up the formula. Let me change what I do, and then see what happens after that.
Yeah, I used to think so. Even that has like a degree of mechanical aspect to it, where you're like, you're still. It's like that quote from The Matrix, where I think Morpheus has taught Keanu Reeves or Neo how to do kung fu, and he's like, you need to learn the rules before you can break them. And all that science behind like figuring out what the matchup is and what they're going for and how they're trying to play the matchup textbook, like you have to know that stuff so you can defend against it the first couple times. But after a while, you don't want to take that shit over and over again. You don't want to keep letting them put you in the 50-50 or the 30-30-30. You want to find ways to create new situations and force them to adapt.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the whole wake up Ochio mentality I had at times, was just like, well, what does he think my wake up game is? Well, he probably thinks it's going to be block, tech, or headbutt, or sumo smash. Like those are pretty much like the four options. Like he probably never thinks that I'm going to wake up command grab, because who the hell does that? And I was like, well, you know what? I do that. And like, here you go. And he's just like, there were times like I'd play with him and like yeah, I kind of see that kind of like reel back, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I got that got into his head. Like he wasn't expecting that, so it's just like it's kind of like breaking down the computer or something like that, right? You're just like you did something, and all of a sudden like the robot like the sparks are coming out of his head, and it's like, oh yeah, I've been there now. Like yeah,
You've reached the limit of the AI. It doesn't know how to. It can't be trained anymore. But it can't be trained by Benny. That's great. Yeah, like it took me a long time to really get to that. Where like with 4 in particular, I actually used to hide behind a lot of the Vortex setups because I was like, I need to break this down into a cross up or basically just an ambiguous cross up. Every time, I remember Armando once said, like, when Muji plays, all he ever wants to do is look for a 50-50 in any game. He just wants to look for a 50-50. And I realized over time, I'm like, the reason why I want that 50-50 is because I don't want to put myself in the guessing situation where I have to guess on their offense, because if I guess wrong, people are going to think poorly of me. People are going to think that I'm not a good player because I don't have that mental game or whatever. And in reality, it's like, well, it's I think Thrasher actually helped me out a lot with Street Fighter V, where I want to say there are times like there are certain things that just piss people off, and there are certain things that people don't want to get caught doing. Like there are things that hurt more when you get hit by them. So like a shimmy in Street Fighter V is a really good example, or getting hit by a Wake Up Ultra is another really good example, where like the whole take the throw meme for Street Fighter V. It's like people decided they wanted to take the throw not because it was numerically advantageous or matchup wise advantageous. It was because they just didn't want to get shimmied, because then the audience would go, oh my God, you got red. Like getting shimmied and whiffing a throw and getting punished for it hurts way more than the average like outplay, versus like, oh, I got frame trapped and I hit a button, I got counter hit. And then in reality, it's like, no, those options are still fundamentally the same. And it's the same thing as my friend when he jumps. It's like, like you can't let them take that option away from you. That's where the take the throw meme happens. And it's like, well, they're just throwing me over and over again, and I'm going to be stubborn and take the throw because I don't want to be humiliated into getting hit by a shimmy,
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point too, because like like that was probably like the biggest thing that I think I ended up doing that too, because it's just like I was so susceptible to shimmies early on, and like it was so frustrating because it's just like my options are limited, and I'm like, okay, so what can I do here? And it's like, okay, well, I'll whiff this throw, or I think he's gonna throw, and then like I get shimmied, and then I was just like, okay, well, I'm still in the corner. I just took a whole ton more damage, and now I'm back at the same place where I was. So like, you know, I don't know, just
Yeah, I
it's a
mean,
big mental thing to deal with.
yeah, but that's the thing, is you're also weighing the numerical and advantages and disadvantages of going for that throw tech, right? And being
Yeah.
like, if you understand that versus, I think for lower level play, a lot of times it's just about not being embarrassed. It's about not being like, hey, I don't want to get caught with my pants down taking this throw. And in reality, it's the same thing as a frame trap. It's the same thing as getting jumped in on.
Yeah.
And more importantly, if you let them take those options away from you, then they are just going to throw you to death. Because why bother otherwise,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, going back to the Mocha thing too, like like I said, like he was a machine when it came to anti-airs, right? Like it's like he knew his anti-airs, whether it was the DP or whether it was like a normal anti-air, like he knew his spacings and everything. So like I had to find ways around that, like using jump normals that maybe I wouldn't normally use to kind of throw off like either the hitboxes or whatever, or because even like the what they call the stop sign, the floating fierce, like the neutral jump fierce, like he was getting to the point where he was taking that away from my game, and I was just like, well, if he takes away that, then like here I am fighting a grounded game against a guy that is that much better than me on the ground. So it's just like you said, I have to take back that option in a way. So I had to find a way around that instead of just conceding that and being like, you know what, I can't jump in on this guy. You know, I just looked at it as like, well, I got to jump in, but I just got to do different things, whether it was a jump jab or a jump like medium punch, or something weird to kind of throw off, like whether because I don't know whether he's reacting to my buttons or whether he's reacting to like the visuals of me jumping and the normal that's coming out and the spacing. Like there's so much to think about in those kinds of situations.
It plays really nicely into that concept of a mental stack. I think that's where like,
Hmm.
you know, if someone's anti-airs are really crispy and you jump at them over and over again, the the cost is you ate that damage. And again, you shouldn't eat the ego damage, but a lot of people do.
Yeah,
But then what you really gain out of that is data that they are watching the air to anti-air you. And in reality, that opens up other options. And so you're basically brute forcing it and trying to be like, okay, so if that option is not viable anymore, I need to find another one versus just letting him. So like with an anti-air, it's like, okay, so if they're watching the sky, they're likely going to be vulnerable to a dash. You know, they
yeah,
aren't watching the ground, or at the very least, they aren't watching to whiff punch something. So maybe I can stick out buttons instead. And
yeah,
you can't do all of it at once. You can't play that mechanical because no one's a true robot, you know.
yeah. Oh man.
I could talk about
Yeah.
fighting game theory and neutral game for days. I'm really excited to have Nico back on at some point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's unfortunate we had to cut things short, but I mean, yeah, it happens. Like he said, he's a busy guy. Like I understand that whole aspect too, and he's got younger kids. Me, I have the more independent older kids, so it's just like, hey, I'm gonna go podcast, and they're just like, okay, and then they're in their rooms doing their own thing.
Well, one thing that I've been trying to work into our podcast for a while is like I'm not a competitive card game player by any means, and my experience has only ever been Legends of Runeterra.
Mm,
But I learned a lot about fighting game, like the big difference between and Nico alluded to it earlier with League of Legends, where it's you just play the best character that fits the role that you're playing, right? And over
mhm.
time, and like for like decks, like card game decks, it's kind of the same thing where it's like I have, I have a way I want to play, whether it's aggro or control or a big combo deck or something, right? And then it's just about like eventually every deck ends up turning into a meta deck anyway. Because over time you make changes to it and it eventually becomes like the top tier deck that you can copy and paste from the internet. And I know you come from a Hearthstone background as well, and so I was
Yeah.
curious about um, like what kind of deck do you like to play, and is there a way we can draw a parallel with that with the fighting games and the characters you choose?
It's kind of funny you bring that up because like it almost comes into like the whole character selection thing because like
Yeah,
I'm a real stickler for like not I try not to look up anything in terms of like decks or top tier decks. Like I'm not necessarily concerned with the winning aspect. Like that's great,
okay.
but it's more about kind of like forging my own path, right? So it's kind of like what Nico was talking about in terms of like, well, I could have picked Sagat, and that would have been the best option in vanilla. He's got the best damage, the best health, whatever. And like, there's a lot of situations where like I'm basically kind of like learning on the fly, so I'll lose a lot, right? I'll go through, I'll look at the cards, I'll make a deck based on something that I like to do or just kind of the way that I want to play, and then like I'll see it lose to something stupid, and I'm like, okay, and then in playing card games, you run into the like you said, you run into the same stuff a lot, right?
Hmm.
So if I see a certain hero or whatever, and I'm like, okay, well, they're probably gonna play this. And I don't know, 7 times out of 10, yeah, they're playing the same thing that everybody else is playing that's out there on the internet. And
Yeah,
I'm just like, oh, this is so lame. And like really the only things I really look up is kind of like ways to counter that. Or like, it's funny, like I'll just look up like, is this deck OP? Why does everybody play this? Or something like that, and just kind of see like what people's opinions are about how to deal with it,
yeah,
and then I'll try to forge counters that way. Like I don't
got it.
necessarily be like, well, I'm gonna go play this too just because everybody else does it. Like
Right.
I've just always been against that because there was a big part of the meta back in Hearthstone. I don't know, I want to say like 4 years ago. It was called Crystal Core,
Okay.
and it was played by the Rogue class. And it was part of like these new quests that they had to do. Like you activate this quest card, you do these certain conditions, and then like all of your cards would become 5/5s. And like every rogue, like everything that I ran into, like everybody was playing that. And I made it a point to like never play that, even to this day. Like I run into it even now, and like I'm real petty. So like if I lose or after I beat a player like that, I'll try to message them. And like I don't know if you've been on BattleNet, but in order to message somebody, you have to request them as a friend, and then
Sure.
they have to accept it, and then you can send a message. You can't just blatantly send a message like on Xbox or whatever.
Sure.
So like I'll send out that request if I beat them, and then like I said, I'm kind of petty. They'll accept it, and I'll be like, "It's 2022, and you're still playing Crystal Core. Like,
Oh
come on,
man,
man! Like, really?
you're one of
Like,
those guys. Okay.
yeah." And I'm just like, I don't know, just like it like eats at my core to see people like play stuff like that. I'm just like, I don't know. That's just me when it comes to like card games.
That's the fascinating part about that, though, is that what I found with Runeterra is that there were always meta decks, right? And then it would end up
Yeah,
being like a rotation between, like, this deck beats that deck, which then beats that deck, which loses to that deck, and you just have a rock paper scissors over and over again. But what happened is those decks aren't necessarily like god decks. They just happen to be the best decks that counter a core group of. They just have the best matchup spread ultimately, but then they
yeah,
still have counter picks, and so I feel like from how you just described it, you're basically like, okay, I need to figure out how to beat the top tier deck. I don't necessarily need to have a deck that beats every other deck. I just want to beat that one thing, which is
yeah.
similar to Honda in a lot of ways, where Honda loses to top tier, but he shits all over some of the lower tier characters, or he has some really
Exactly.
polarizing matchups. And that's really fascinating because you're choosing not necessarily to play top tier, but you are choosing to you're choosing to acknowledge the weaknesses of your deck or your character, but still be willing to take those wins from the people that are just taking the easy way out, so to speak, and playing Sagat, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, because that's just like, I don't know. For me, like, I don't know. That to me, that takes a lot of the joy. Like, it's different, I guess, in fighting games because it's like, in a way, you still kind of have to execute, right? Like, you still got to learn the matchups. You still got to learn, how to the execution in order to do things. Whereas in card games, there's less of a barrier like that. It's more RNG based, and it's just like, okay, well, let me copy and paste this deck. I'll make this deck, and it's pretty much just like it's almost like a flow chart in a way, right? Like you're like,
Oh yeah.
okay, well, if I get these cards to start, I'm on my path to doing what I need to do to get my win condition, and it's pretty kind of cut and dry, kind of straightforward with that. And I don't know, maybe that's why it kind of eats at me because it's just like for me, I don't know. I think so to me, I feel like that just kind of takes away the enjoyment of the game for
So
me personally.
yeah, I get you. I I thought that too for a little bit with Runeterra, where I was like, this is just mechanic. Like because I played an aggro deck in Runeterra, and all I did was just I played to the curve every time and just said, okay, I'm going to play this card, and then I look at my hand, I have this card that fits really nicely, has just the right amount of mana, so I'll just play these over and over again. I'll swarm the deck and I'll win. That's my win condition, right? But after I watched Rick play Runeterra, and what he did is he actually held back very regularly and was like, I don't want to play optimal at all times because he might have this card that counters it. He might have this card. And I've noticed that the flow chart breaks down against good defense. In fighting games, the flow chart breaks down against good defense. My vortex doesn't work if I can't knock them down. And it's like that for card games too, where it's like if you know what cards are in rotation at that time or what cards are popular in that deck, then you can play around those and not take as big of risks and play mechanical and flowcharty, right? And that to me is the neutral of the card game, where you're thinking about what button he might press and what whether or not Honda's going to hit that forward roundhouse at that range, or if he's going to dash Ocho instead. You're thinking about those options, but you're not necessarily reacting to them because you have all the options in your hand, but you're not going to play them because you want to see what they have instead. I don't know. It's good shit. It's some cool stuff. There's a lot of parallels.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying because like that's probably my second most aggravating thing to play against is somebody that plays super aggro and just face and has real kind of like
Yeah.
small minions, and like it's a tough thing to deal with in card games, especially with certain classes. So like um again, like I find ways to try to counter that. Like so, whereas I might have a deck that does, works a certain way. If I run into an aggro deck and it just kind of rolls me over, and I'm just like, okay, what can I use to counter that? Whether it's some kind of like AoE attack or something, kind of to clear the board. And like, I get to the point to where, like you said with Rick, I start playing in that kind of like reactionary or kind of like reserve style because I'm like, okay, they have whatever 4 minions on the board. I can clear it right now, but what happens if they have more, right? Then I don't have that same ability to clear, you know, 2 more minions that come on the board, right? So I'll hold off and be like, okay, well, this turn isn't going to kill me. Let me see what they do next turn. Then all of a sudden, it's just like they got kind of empty their hand, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. clear everything, and I'm just like, okay, now I got all the momentum. Now I can win because literally they
Yeah,
threw their hand out there and they have nothing to play anymore.
it's a bait. In fighting games,
Yeah,
it's a bait to get them to burn all their meter, right?
yeah,
They're like, hey, I think this DPF ADC is coming, and I know you have 2 bars. I want to take those 2 bars, and so I'm just gonna sit there and block it, right? Oh man,
yeah,
that's really cool. Yeah, there's so many parallels there, and it got me thinking when you brought up League of Legends earlier, and I was like, there's also the side of like character selection as far as the top tier stuff that he was talking about, where like with card games, again, like you can usually fit a mold. Do you want to play control? Do you want to play combo? Do you want to play aggro, or another like a couple gimmick decks out there in Runeterra at least? And
yeah,
what you do and eventually is you just find the best version of that. So like for me, like for when I played Runeterra, it was like, okay, aggro is really good with shit, I don't remember, with Yordles. Like they really see this expansion was just a bunch of little minions, right? Kind of like what you were describing earlier. So I'm like, okay, I like to play aggro. I was playing this other discard aggro earlier, but I'll play these little minions aggro instead because I know I want to play aggro, but I don't necessarily need to pigeonhole myself to a specific deck or a specific, like I just know spiritually what style I want to play as, and I pick the character that's the best in that way. In
yeah,
Street Fighter V right now, like there, and in most fighting games, there's usually a tier list, right? And the top tier characters, the best fighting games at least, are the ones where the top tier characters represent a series of different styles, and then you can choose to play those styles. And if you want to play competitively, you just pick those styles at the top tier. So an example would be Dalsum, who is like, why play Minot right now when you can play Dalsum? Because they fundamentally do the same thing. It's just that Dalsum is better right now. Or Shotos are a classic example where it's, why play Ryu right now when Luke is in the game? You can play Luke. You can still play the way you want to play, but
yeah.
you just pick the best version of the way you want to play.
Yeah. I was the thing I was laughing about. I was thinking about one of the recent changes they made to Hearthstone is 'cause there's a lot of certain cards that certain classes need, right? That
Yeah.
for specific class specific things where it's just like I need this card to activate and continue what I want to do.
Yes,
And
like
like
basically cards that just have to be in your deck, basically.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So one thing that there was a card that they put in. I think they recently nerfed it. I forgot what the name of it was, but basically what it does is you play it, and it randomly chooses 3 cards from the opponent for you to take, and then you swap with 3 random cards in your hand. So it's one of those things like
Hella
so it's just
random.
like yeah, exactly, and it's just like I typically hate RG in the games, right? Like when it's you just lose to stuff like that. It's frustrating, right?
Sure.
But I'm a particularly lucky person when it comes to shit like that. So
You playing
it kind
Raffles
of,
and Hearthstone?
yeah, it plays into my hands because there's been times where like it's been both ways. Like I've been on the offensive and I'll be like, all right, he has 4 cards in his hand. I'm pretty sure he has this. Let me see if I can get 3 of those 4. Three or one of those cards to be the 3 that I need. Right. And sure enough, it gets displayed, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna take that. Because there was one game, like, yeah, I did that. I took the one card that was his win condition, right? And then he turned the tables on me, and I think he had 2 copies of that same card. And you're not, he used a different card to like copy it. And again, I think I had 5 cards in my hand at the time, and he was basically trying to snatch it back from me, right? And he did it twice. The first time, I was just like, oh, he didn't get the one that he needs. And he played it again. And the second time, he didn't get what he needs. And I just started laughing because I was like, oh man, what luck is this, right? Like
Yeah.
if he had taken it back, I was gonna lose. And I remember like he messaged me and he was just like, he's like, what the hell was that? He's just like, you have the craziest luck ever. Like, because 2 times for you to potentially grab that card out of my hand and he didn't do it. And I was just like, I think it's the craziest thing. Like it kind of frustrates the hell out of me, like when people play it against me. But then it's like one of those things like everybody's doing it. So I'm like, well, you know what? This is just a random thing. So I play it too, just for the hell of it.
I think that actually plays a lot into the theme of this podcast where, like, if you have a deck or somebody else who's playing extra mechanically in a fighting game, And actually, even on the video feed that we have right now, we just saw a match between Mr. SNK and Ernest, who's kind of good example of that. Where earlier Mr. SNK knocked Crazy EX down and then ultra'd him on Crazy EX's wake up. Just threw the ultra out there, and it's that where the mechanicalness, you throw a wrench into that. You put that RNG out there because that's gonna fuck up any like plan that they have. And it doesn't matter like what the result is. You're just an agent of chaos and you're deliberately trying to knock them off kilter, right? That's fascinating.
Yeah, man.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about is the Project L trailer dropped recently, or like a dev blog for it. And did you get a chance to watch that?
Oh no, that's a good reminder because I usually try to reserve like watching that kind of stuff, and then me and G will watch it, and then I'll be like, we'll kind of like kind of talk about it afterwards. So
Okay.
I haven't looked at it yet. I saw some of the discussion you guys had, and I was like, let me scroll away from this.
Fair enough. No spoilers then. I will not talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just like all the Riot stuff is on my mind since we talked about Runeterra, League of Legends, and now Project L all in one show here.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I'll probably go watch it when I'm eating dinner now because I could smell food, so I'm like,
Nice. You're salivating at the thought of more fighting games, right?
yeah.
And then another thing is like, so the closed beta is happening for Street Fighter 6 too,
Hmm.
and the Game Awards are coming up on this weekend if I recall correctly, and I think
Yep.
there's going to be Tekken 8 there. Tekken 8 is guaranteed, maybe Street Fighter, and it sounds like Mortal Kombat's not confirmed at all. But are there
Oh.
any particular fighting games that you're interested in hearing about in the next month or so?
I mean, Tekken 8 kind of interests me, not as much as Street Fighter 6. Project L, I've been kind of keeping tabs on just because it's like I don't have any real attachment to the characters. So like when it comes to like roster or anything like that, like to me, it's brand new fighting game, brand new roster. Like I know some people are just like, oh well, I want this character because I play them in League of Legends or whatever. And like me, I don't have any attachment to anybody, so I'm just like, I'm literally kind of just gonna go in with a kind of blank slate and look at who I think looks cool, like aesthetically, and then like moveset wise, and I'm just gonna kind of go from there.
I get you. I are you gonna do that for Street Fighter 6 as well?
No, Street Fighter 6, I'm kind of dead set on playing Honda and Sim to start. I don't know. I still want to see what Ed brings to the table. I feel like I don't know. The more I was like playing the beta, I felt like things were a little bit more um, complicated than I initially was given the game. So at first I thought, the drive rush, the drive impact, and all that stuff. I was like, okay, well, this is I could probably translate all this to multiple characters. That might still be something I do, but I mean, it's really going to depend on my time. I might just end up going back to just being a character specialist, just for lack of time, and just kind of I don't want to, jack of all trades kind of thing. Just be like, oh, okay, well, I'm whatever D tier with three characters versus kind of being like, B tier with like one.
Got it. That's actually one of the questions I wanted to ask Nico before he left, and maybe I can ask you as well since you guys have that in common. But like, so Honda sucks in 4, and you guys have established that. So why did you stick with him?
It was just familiarity for me, man. Like I played Honda in Street Fighter 2, and
Uh-huh.
then like for 4, it's just like I said, I've never been the type of person to kind of just conform. Like I didn't, I never bothered to look up like who's the best. It's just like this is who I want to play, and like it was tough going, taking that road and kind of like learning like the deficiencies in like certain matchups, and just like man, he absolutely sucks against Goken. Like as much as bad as the matchups were against like Ryu and Sagat and Vanilla and just Shotos in general. Like for me, it was one of those things where it's like so many people played those characters that even though on paper the matchup's tough, like I was comfortable in those matchups enough that I'm just like, okay, you want to pick Ryu? Like, okay, then I feel like I'm on even footing just because of my experience like playing against that character so much.
I get you. Okay. Okay. And I guess I'll save that question for Nico the next time we have him on then.
Yeah,
Well, very cool.
yeah, man,
Well,
it's good times.
Yeah, this is a good show. Again, this is an interesting format in that maybe we should try this again where like if the guest leaves, I don't know. The guests are always usually have so much fun like that they want to stick around, they want to go longer. So I'm not sure if
Yeah.
it'd be right to kick them off in the future, but maybe
Yeah.
like it's kind of like I think Jon Stewart's podcast does this too where like he'll do an interview and then afterwards he'll get the last word so to speak and like talk with his staff about it and kind of react to it and kind of present it in like here's what I thought about that conversation. And so this is kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, that's
Maybe we should
cool.
experiment with that format sometime too.
Yeah, we'll have
um,
to see.
yeah, well, cool. I guess we'll call it here then. So the outro that we've got here, let me pull that up because I'm always reading from this script here. You can find us on Twitch at twitch.tv/spiral series, YouTube at youtube.com/spiral series, and on Apple Podcasts and Spotify under Absolute Guard. To all of you watching and listening, we do appreciate you liking and subscribing. That part is extra mechanical. I'm definitely saying that. So Benny, do you want to throw a wrench in it and be random here?
Oh man. No, we're good, man. Like you know where to
Okay.
find us.
Yeah, pretty much. And like we have that Twitter going right now, but man, we picked an interesting time to to go get into Twitter. So maybe Instagram is the next spot for us to go. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But
Yeah, we'll see.
cool, cool. All right. Well, have a good night, everybody.
Yep.